San Francisco a couple times.
Thank you for coming.
I
I really appreciate it, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your passion for learning and taking time out of your week to actually spend time to study this craft. So tonight, I'm going to introduce Andy Peterson, who's the QA manager at Costco Travel, and I'll let you do the rest of that introduction. But thank you for presenting, and thank you to the rest of you for coming.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks, Quardev, for hosting this and inviting me. It's been about 2 years since Krista has been trying to get me to come out here and do a talk. So it's nice to actually connect and get this up and running. So yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the journey that Costco Travel's been on for getting to a more continuous delivery process and building up their speed and confidence of the test cases in that release process. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm going to try not to step in front of this. I'm kind of a wanderer, so. About me, I've been at Costco Travel for 6 years. I spent the first couple of years working on the Costco Travel Canada website and kind of spawning out the sister website for the Canadians and getting that up and running. And then I became a QA lead and for various teams before I became a manager. And now I manage a team of about 3 Scrum teams that create new products and markets for members to make them happy travelers so that they join Costco, renew their memberships. So that's kind of about me. Feel free to link into me. Just let me know like where you heard about me, so it's not kind of out of the blue. I'd like to have a little bit of context when I get those LinkedIn messages. So, and then what we're in for tonight, I kind of wanted to go over briefly kind of like our journey in kind of our sprint timelines, our release cycles since we've started our agile processes. I want to talk about the QA implications that we've had with those changes and in those different phases, and then I want to talk about some of the outcomes and benefits that we've had because of that, and then I want to talk about where we're going, and then what we want to get to. First, the sprint timelines that I wanted to go over. The different phases. We've got about 5 different phases, starting with when we started with our agile processes, and then going from those initial agile processes into moving towards a more continuous process. So the second phase was what I call the first disruption. It was the first time we kind of were learning something new and trying to improve our processes. And then the next phase was getting rid of our stabilization sprint. And that was probably one of the bigger phases that we went through. And then the next phase, which is actually coming up here, is actually making our sprints be the same as our release. And then getting to a continuous integration, continuous testing, continuous delivery time frame, which we're hoping to do in the next couple of years here. So I just kind of want to go through each one of these separately. Our first delivery cycle looked like 3-week. We had a 3-week working kind of functional sprint, followed by 2 weeks of stabilization. So we had basically a 5-week release cycle, and most of this was all automated. It was, all manual at the time. So we spent a lot of time regressing during that 2-week stabilization, a lot of time doing our non-functional tests, so security and performance, a lot of time planning, trying to figure out Agile, and doing a lot of goal work and trying to just learn how to do that. Agile was done pretty much homegrown organically. We didn't do a lot of consulting work or anything like that. So that was a lot of learning there. But we started with 2 Scrum teams, and now we have about 20 right now. So we've been growing. What I call the first disruption, it was a little bit confusing, but the 2 goals were to reduce the stabilization sprint and to also reduce the actual working kind of functional sprint. We knew we couldn't get rid of the stabilization sprint, so we went to a week there. We did want to go to a 2-week sprint, but the problem was we didn't want to have more releases yet, and we also, if we went to like a 2-1 model, we would have just had too many stabilization sprints. So we went to a 2-week kind of working sprints, and then followed by a 1-week stabilization, so we could stabilize that before we released both of those working sprints into production. So those 2 sprints kind of built on each other, and we were in that for about 2 years before we moved to the point where we got rid of the stabilization sprint. And this one took the most work for QA, especially in getting rid of that stabilization, because we had to get our automation up to a point where we were comfortable with it running on a regular basis, with the confidence in it. We had to get to the point where we were running our security and performance tests on a regular basis, and we were comfortable with getting that within a sprint. So that was kind of a quick move. So we spent about 8 months here, and then at the end of this month, we're going to be cutting that down and actually releasing at the end of every sprint now. So every sprint is going to be a release. So at the end, on 5/28, it's going to be our first out-of-band release. So we'll be doubling the amount of releases and doubling the amount of sprints. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to paint the context here. Is this just a web-based UI type of database, transactional activity?
Yeah, this system is it's web-based. We have 2 main systems. One is our outside website to the customer, and we have an internal website that our agents and our buyers and everybody uses. So that's kind of the basis of it all. We have a ton of third-party interactions as well. So, but yeah. So yeah, after that, we have, it's hopefully about a 2-year kind of time horizon. We have a lot of proof of concepts out there, but we're to the point now where we need to shrink down, or we can't shrink down anymore. We need to kind of start thinking differently. We need to start using tools. We need different tools. We need to start doing things differently to get to that continuous delivery model. I mean, we're to the point where we have a continuous integration down. We have pipelines running in each of our environments, but we don't have our pipelines we don't have our environments connected together very well, and the pipelines within our production environment, aren't really there either. They're very distributed, and we have all these manual checks in between. So those are kind of a lot of the spots we need to fill. But we have a lot of, like I said, proof concepts that we're working on. We're moving out to the cloud, containerization with Docker, we have a huge core monolith that we're going to be kind of chipping away at and kind of building microservices based around those. So we've been kind of chipping those out right now as we speak. So those are some of the areas that we need to improve on. So, but that's what we're going to be heading towards after this month. Some of the QA implications that we've kind of had to deal with on a functional basis, non-functional, and then kind of some of the deployment changes that we've had to make. First of all, of course, yes, automation. We started our agile kind of changeover in the early 2000 teens. And in 2013, we decided that we were going to set up a internal automation team. All of our QA engineers were pretty much, most of them were agents from off the floor. Travel agents basically that were taking calls. They came down and initially they were, basically running scenarios from an Excel spreadsheet, and then we had a QA manager come over from the home office, so the Costco mothership, and kind of start building out an actual QA discipline. And in 2013, I got hired in, and then there was a network engineer that turned into a QA engineer, and him and I kind of put together we had RFT from IBM. I don't know if anybody's used that here. Yeah, that was our problem too. We started kind of building up test cases in RFT, and we were using Microsoft Test Manager, so we to kind of house the manual tests. So we kind of created a lab out of there and used the generic tests to wrap those RFT tests in it. And we got about 20 tests, and we called it our BBT, and they were a little bit flaky, but they were running, and they were in a suite. It was all fine and good, but that was the point where we were able to ask for a couple of contract assets that could concentrate full-time on automation, because before this we were kind of running on 20% time but using about 30% of our time. So and then after that we had those two contractors. We identified it was 162 tests. They were all kind of manual regression tests that they started coding. They were about 2 weeks in, and they were like, "Hey, can we use a new product?" And we were like, "Sure, as long as it's Java and you do the 162 tests." So they brought in Selenium, and it was within like 2 days they had a couple tests up and running, and they knocked out those 160 tests, and they did the BBTs that we had too. So we actually were able to save a lot of money from IBM as well by getting rid of RFT. So because that was successful, we were able to hire in 3 full-time engineers that were able to form a team that would focus on automating all of our tests, creating a framework. One of the contractors stayed on, and we hired two more assets, and they were able to. They actually kind of rewrote the whole framework, because those original 180, 200 tests were based off manual tests, and those aren't the best. That's not the best strategy for an automated system. So they kind of rewrote the framework and most of the tests so that it was a little bit more stable. But now we're up to about, we're 700, 800 tests, and just they're continually running. 2017, we were actually able to hire in the performance and security experts. Those guys were key because we wouldn't have been able to shed that stabilization sprint without them. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. In 2018, we made the leap to getting an SDET on every one of our Scrum teams. Before, we didn't, pretty much all the automation was done on that centralized team. So now that centralized team is able to do just framework and tools work, and the SDETs on the Scrum teams are able to actually concentrate on the features that they love. Yeah.
How many other folks in general are on those Scrum teams?
Oh, our Scrum teams, the traditional Scrum team it's a 3-2-1, 3 devs, 2 QAs, and one PO. We don't really use a Scrum Master. Our POs kind of act as a Scrum Master. But, yeah, so it's pretty good ratio for us. And depending on the work the teams do, we have variations of that, but that's the traditional one. So, and then some of those teams have 2 SDETs depending on how technical the work is.
So are your purpose security still kind of your specialists that you keep on the side, or how are they?
They actually are housed within that engineering productivity team, so that core SDET team. That team is probably 8 or 9 folks right now. So it started out as 2 contractors, and then yeah, it's grown quite a bit. So, but yeah. And then so some more automation work. This is kind of related, but we had to create a separate QA environment for just automation, because in the beginning there's a lot of contention between our functional testers and our people that wanted automation, or the continual automation that we needed to have run. So, you know, the functional testers, hey, I need this new feature in, I need a build, and then they kind of destroyed a 2-hour long automation suite that was running, and the opposite happened as well. So, so we were able to kind of spin up that automation environment, and this one was kind of cool because it started off as kind of like a rinky-dinky environment, and actually has grown into quite an environment that is. I mean, it's just as good as an environment as the other environments. So that's been nice. But that also gave us the ability to create kind of a gatekeeper environment. So we created a pipeline in which we run that automated, like an automated smoke test against the automation environment, and then if the smoke test passes, it'll build into our QA, our primary QA environment, so that we can prevent any of those build blocking, environment killing bugs that go in. Because now that we have 40 testers out there, when that environment goes down, we have 3 people scrambling, and then 37 people trying to find something to do. So that was kind of a key pipeline thing, and that was kind of saving. It would happen like 2 or 3 times a month, and it seemed to always happen in pockets. So it was kind of nice to just have one of the environments down and not both of them. So close to feature complete. This is nice now because as we're getting this automation in so quickly, and the automation happening so rapidly. At a couple times a day, it's kind of fun because the automation with the functional testers, you're kind of racing to kind of catch a bug that your dev put in before the automation catches it, or at least before the automation usually catches it first, but whether or not somebody takes a look at it and kind of realizes it's a bug before you realize it's a bug. So it's a fun race between to see who finds it first, whether the automation or the actual feature tester finds it. And then the other thing is, because we have SDETs and all the Scrum teams, we get automation into the actual feature work, so we can call it, we can add it into the definition of done, and get those features, get that feature complete, including the automation, so we don't have a lot of test debt out there. So, manual testing, we still have manual testing. It being a customer-facing website, we want to have eyes on it. But there's also stuff out there that we haven't been able to automate yet. But there's a couple of things that we do to kind of minimize that. One, it's pretty much, at least for regression testing, we time box it. So we do it in a couple different ways. We've make sure that the manual testing is done within 3 hours, and then we also try not to have one tester be testing for more than 15 minutes. And this is, again, especially true now that we're not in the stabilization sprint, because we'd be interrupting their sprint work, and we don't want to be doing that. And then we also audit at least once a year, usually a little bit more frequently, all of the manual tests that are out there, to try to find things that are obsolete, or that, you know, our automation is now mature enough to automate, so that we can kind of mark that as, hey, we can automate that, and, you know, usually ship it out to somebody who needs some work. But yeah, that's not going away yet. Performance. Once we hired our performance engineer, before we hired the performance engineer, it was kind of a lost art. There was one or two or maybe three people that kind of knew how to run, use our JMeter and everything, and kind of create the report and knew what to do with it. So that was kind of done once a release, and it was basically one of those things where you dusted it off, ran it, kind of submitted your report, and hopefully it wasn't too far off the baseline, because if it was, you had to go through 120 check-ins to try to figure out, you know, maybe what happened, and it was probably a hardware problem anyway. So she came in, and, you know, of course, put it in Jenkins. She had that done, you know, within a couple of days, maybe weeks. She had that going at a regular cadence, and then she made it daily, so that, you know, we weren't reporting it daily, but it was running daily, and then it would, you know, it would email us if it if it exceeded the baseline variance on a daily basis. And then she was also able to kind of spin up another dedicated environment just for performance. Because I don't know if you guys, I mean, before we used our pre-production environment for this and security, and I don't know if any of you guys have tried to run security and performance at the same time. If you have and you didn't get a variance for your baseline, there's probably something wrong. So yeah, I ran into that a couple times where I was like, what's going on? So yeah, she was able to spin that up, and that's her baby. And then the other thing she did was she was able to kind of create the self-service Jenkins job that she would create different queries for you, like that are project-based. So if you had a special something, a project, like if you were adding an index or you know, a new column to a database or something like that, and you wanted to test with the before and after to see, you know, what the performance impact was just for that. She would kind of create that, and you could kind of run it at your leisure as the developers were creating it or changing it. So that was kind of cool, and it was kind of very proactive versus the kind of reactive measures that we were dealing with before. So she also brought in a bunch of tools. Like we had Splunk before, but we weren't using it for performance. So we were able to kind of pull the timings off the logs and kind of create dashboards from those, and then Dynatrace to kind of pinpoint problems if we had them. We also had a couple of in-house tools that we use, a proxy recorder and a kind of a mocking tool that's been kind of invaluable for this. Security, it's very similar. Like it was same people. We're kind of running security at the during these time frames. So we were running apps, IBM's app scan, once a release. During the stabilization sprint, it was one of those things where you had to usually update the policies and then run the entire suite of tests. Some of those were 5 to 8 hours long, and we had our security guy come in, and he threw those in Jenkins. He also came up with he found this vital few policy that came with AppScan that he's been running daily. It takes about 45 minutes to run, but it's nice to have that daily scan to kind of find those find the issues, or at least the kind of the low-hanging fruit issues that are easy to find pretty quickly, so that you find them when they happen. The other thing about performance and security is we'll run them. We run them in the larger environments weekly now versus every release. Going to the kind of deployment area, the biggest win for us was deploying in a no downtime environment. Our no downtime project was huge, and we couldn't move from the 5-week cycles to the 4-week cycles without doing this, because we didn't want to move from doing 10 deliveries to doing 13, because every five weeks we were coming in at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, turning off the connection, bleeding off all the users, and deploying. Hopefully leaving at about 2 o'clock. Hopefully the delivery manager that was in brought good snacks. And on a bad one, you were leaving when everybody was coming in the morning. So, we got to the point where we were growing so fast, we were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars each time we were doing this. So we were able to put together a team that made sure everything was forward compatible, backward compatible when we deployed, and we're able to kind of do that today now. The next thing is implementing feature flags. We'd always had feature flags. We only had used them for larger projects, but now it's kind of our culture pretty much for anything except for a quick little bug fix. We have a feature flag so that we have more control over what's in there. So when we, it just decoupled the release from the deployments. So we would, in the past, we would deploy, and if something was wrong when we turned everything back on, it was usually a scramble to figure out, hey, what broke it, it also gave us a little bit of control as to when we could turn things on, so we didn't have to turn everything on during that deployment. We could turn it on throughout the life cycle, whenever the business wanted to. Whenever a third party said, hey, on April 24th, feel free to, this endpoint will be available. I mean, it's just a quick switch and refreshing your cache. So it's a lot less risk, a lot more flexibility that we have now. Just kind of cleaning up the feature flags is kind of the problem we're having now, so. Deployment, creating smaller chunks. So our user stories were kind of large, and our business owner manager liked to use the term sashimi slices. So our culture way back when was kind of creating our story as kind of, if you had 3 screens together and you were kind of manipulating data, like that was the user story, was kind of going from screen to screen to screen. And he wanted us to move from that to kind of like, doing a user story for the first screen and then the second screen. And that was kind of a big shift for us, was trying to figure out how to do that. So it was one of those things, and we actually had to put into place like, hey, we can't have any stories larger than an 8 anymore. Of course, like after we did that, we probably had, 60% of the stories were an 8, but that eventually died down. So, but yeah, that helped out, and we needed this we needed going from 3 to 2, so a 3-week 3-week sprint to a 2-week sprint, and then again from the 2-week sprints down to the 2-week sprint. Deployment into PPE, so we're now deploying weekly into PPE instead of every sprint. And this is kind of what I was referring to when I was talking about security and performance. We're able to kind of run those in our pre-production, or at least security in our pre-production environment at a kind of a more frequent cadence, not every sprint. So, and that's also helped with the no downtime deployment, because we can also test that backward compatibility and forward compatibility during that deployment as well, as we kind of mimic the deployment in production. All right, and now I'm just going to move into some outcomes. The first thing, of course, is the number of releases. So in our 5-week, so the 3-2 and then the 2-2-1, we would have 10 releases a year. So our business users and our customers would get the new functionality 10 times a year. And then we moved to the 4 weeks, so the 2-2 model. They would get it 13 times a year. The nice thing about that one was it aligned with our business periods, so that we could easily kind of put our IT goals alongside with the business goals. So it kind of had a side effect that way as well. And then again, at the end of this month, we'll be going to the 2-week cycle. So again, we'll be aligning with the business periods. We'll just have 2 in each business period, but we'll be delivering hopefully useful software to the customers and members every 2 weeks, and that'll give them the opportunity to kind of shift and iterate. They won't have to wait 3 weeks to make a change if they don't like something, or do a hotfix. So that's kind of what we're going towards. Another thing, this one I like. I'll be curious to see if you guys see what I like about it. But so this is the production defects fix, and during the 2-2-1 cycle, we fixed an average about 15 production bugs each week. And then when we moved to 2-2, we're fixing 12. And I had to do it by week, because because it's 5 and 4, so I had to do it by week, which kind of threw me off. But once I kind of realized we were doing less, and quite a bit less, and this 2-2-1 has the stabilization sprint in it. So, I mean, my question is what was stable about it? Aren't we supposed to be finding these bugs in that stabilization sprint? And and what was being different. So, I mean, that's kind of lifting that confidence and you know, getting that testing architecture in there, so that we can find them quicker and better as we build it out. So, and then related to this one, this is kind of our number of hot fixes, going from 2017 to today. And this is per release, but I mean the trend line is obviously like falling down. Even the peaks are trending down. These are probably like, you know, the major projects that go in. I didn't actually map those back, but so that's even trending down. But the best part is I mean, where we're at right now, we have single digits. And the part I like about this is it's usually the QA group that is kind of tasked with this, and we actually have an awesome QA lead who runs almost all of our hot fixes, and that's one of those situations where she's trying to get three people that want something done, and trying to get a whole organization to do something out of the box, when they're trying to just go through the release cycle. So this is one of my favorite things. And it was funny because I remember when we got to this one, that was one right there. Like we were all like, oh, this is totally a fluke, and it's like it's totally been panning out that, you know, it's just continuing to stay down there. So hopefully when we get to this 2 week, it'll stay down there, because, you know, they don't have to wait as long to put a hotfix out there. So what's yet to come? I've already talked about the mind shift, and trying to get from an actual sprint. I mean, we'll have sprints, but getting from an actual release to continually rolling features out into production. So how do we connect all of these things? And right now, like I said, microservices, getting into the cloud, containerization. I mean, these are all the kind of the big projects that we're working towards right now to kind of get to this model. We're doing our source control in TFS right now, which makes merge just like impossible. We try to merge as infrequently as possible, so we're also moving to Git so that we can have a little bit more flexibility there. So there's a lot of things kind of getting put together so that we can be a little bit more flexible and get us to at least the continuous delivery. I mean, we're pretty close to continuously integrated, except for our production environment. Continuous testing, I think we need to get a little bit more comfortable with some of the testing production in an automated fashion. And then also, as we move to microservices, it kind of ties into my next slide here. And I don't want to talk about you know, what people think about the testing pyramid or anything, but right now our model is kind of the gauntlet or the martini glass, and we're really good at UI testing where we're at. But our service layer is our API testing. We just don't have. We were a very mature system when our automation world started. So we didn't get our test hooks in. We didn't build APIs. Our UI layer does most of our work. We are in the. If we didn't have, we did a UK car hire project in which we took all of our car hire, car rental. We made all of our car rental stuff API based. So if we didn't have that, you know, this would basically be a string or nothing in between. But So we do have some API and service level layer testing, but what we really need to get to is filling out that middle layer of the pyramid and being comfortable enough with that so that we can kind of shave off some of that UI testing that's too expensive. It's just too much work. It can be too flaky, too much change. And on the dev side, it's that's not where we should be putting that code either, because we can't use it somewhere else either. So if we do want to use it on the UK side, if it has a different UI, which is what our UK site does have, it's basically having to recode the whole UI again. So yeah.
What are the roadblocks you see between current and the goal?
Right now, it's if we don't go towards a kind of a microservice model, it's going to be how do we get the devs to kind of put those test hooks in, whether it be going to just a simple API model, or I think we have to go to a service-oriented model just to get to a continuous delivery aspect. But in doing that, that's I think going to answer most of the questions here. But if we didn't, we have to be able to kind of put our foot down and say, hey, how can we test this, or we just have to live with what we have. And like I said, we were successful. It was an API project, but the reason we did the API project was, like I said, to have two different front ends and have not have the same code on both front ends, and have the API kind of control that rental car logic. Whereas before, both the US and Canada site did have pretty much all UI logic. But when we put the UK, we created the API for the UK site, and we're able to replace most of that. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Have you been able to get devs to write like service layer or UI layer testing?
We have a couple of our Scrum teams that are focused on that right now. We have two different microservices that they're kind of spinning up right now as kind of like proof of concepts. It's not really directly related to our business logic yet, so we're basically trying is where we're at. And so we have them doing that, and we're also trying to figure out the best division lines as well as kind of the other piece that we're working on right now. So we're actively working towards it. And then we also have our EP team, or our automation team is actually we've been creating our own kind of service oriented system that we've been creating our own kind of test framework around, so that we can have an idea for how are we going to test this stuff once the devs get it created. So we're also doing a lot of work on our test side to be ready for that and know what to ask for when we're there. Yeah.
How are your UI tests constructed? Are you using like an XUnit style BDD framework?
It's all. I mean, it's no, it's not BDD. It's just a page object model. We're actually introducing a control layer right now, but we have a page model. Yeah, it's your basic page object model. So. Yeah, I think I just have the summary slide here. So what we talked about, kind of like the phases we went through, and then I kind of talked about the different aspects that QA kind of went through to get through those phases. Some of the benefits that we've been seeing, so the frequency to the user going up, the number of production bugs that we've fixed going down, and the number of hot fixes going way down. And then kind of what we need to do in the future is kind of have that mindset shift and kind of filling out that middle layer of that test pyramid. And then thanks for coming. Yeah, and I just wanted to leave you with a parting question as to kind of like, what are you guys, what are you doing? What are you doing for yourselves and your teams and your orgs to kind of improve your systems? You know, how often do you guys think about those? It's always fun to kind of show that stuff off and talk about this stuff. I asked this because in creating this, I had a lot of aha moments that I had fun sharing with my team and my fellow managers in being like, oh, remember when we did this, and just seeing that timeline kind of play out. So I wanted to make sure you guys are always thinking about that. It's, you know, it's part of the 8 Agile methodology is that continuous improvement that we always have to keep our minds on. So any other questions? Yeah.
How long does it take for all your tests to run?
We never really run them all at once. Our regression tests, our priority 1 regression test suite is the longest. That one takes 3-4 hours, I'd say. Our smoke tests run about 20 minutes. It's a little bit longer than, and it also depends on how many labs and machines we have in the lab available. But the way we have it tuned right now, that's kind of the way it works. So that's the high one and the low one, and then everything else is kind of in between. And then also, like, we have things shift from priority 1 to priority 2 a lot. So, but our priority 1 regression tests run about 3 times a week, I think now, and our priority 2 ones just run once a week. So, yeah.
What kind of mobile testing are you doing? And, you know, is this all web, or do you have an app? Or?
No, it's all responsive. We do most of our, we're having troubles getting our iPhone stuff up and running with automation right now. So that's kind of one of the things we're working on, and a lot of that's kind of done mobile. And when I talk about stuff that we want to shift off and not do in a mobile or in a manual fashion, that's one of the things at the top of my mind is kind of getting to that. But we're using Appium, and we've realized just doing what do you call it? The emulators, yeah, that doesn't cut it for us. That doesn't find what we need. We tried to go that route, and it was like, yeah, it was. We were finding all the same bugs that we found like on a desktop. So yeah, we're definitely pushing towards actual devices, and we're doing most of that in house. We didn't really use a third party for that. So yeah.
And this may be out of the boundaries on this one. I don't know how far you are along with any cloud transition. Are you able to describe that at all? I mean, I'm also interested, like, you mentioned a number of third-party connections, so all of a sudden that becomes very complex.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear anything that you've observed with that.
We have, like I said, the mocking tool that we use, that's been highly useful. We have a lot of like kind of certain environments that we use, but a lot of the certain environments that are out there don't have very they don't have great data out there, so we end up kind of creating our own mock data. the cruise data is very, very complicated. It's like a series of seven calls just to kind of put together one booking. So that's very hard to even mock. And there's not a great kind of cert environment out there. So it's really varied based on the different companies that we deal with. But it's something that we're always working on as well. And then the cloud, we're going to be using the Microsoft platform, and we're just that one's in our ops hands right now. So we haven't really had a whole lot of I haven't been able to play with it myself. I'll put it that way. So, but yeah, and we don't really have a great kind of model for what we're going to do with it for test either. So, other than spinning up environments and stuff like that. So. Anything else?